I don't like the Lucian Alliance. That's it. No meme, no joke, no insightful comment. I just don't like them all that much as villains. Actually, let me rephrase that. I didn't like them in universe. In SG-1, I thought they were okay, a minor villain group who were opposed to our heroes. But those are the keywords, minor group. But in universe, they were elevated to the main bad guys of the Stargate franchise, and I'm sorry, but
I don't really care.
in the odd event you don't know what the Lucian Alliance is, it was a coalition of worlds formed from former slaves, smugglers, and mercenaries after the Gould Empire collapsed. For all intent and purposes, they were a crime syndicate and was hostile towards Earth and the free Jaffa nation, often exploiting various human worlds. One of my problems with them is a bit of an issue I have with Stargate, that they rely on the aliens being just plain humans. Now, they did create some good reasons as to why this is, transplanted humans or humans being possessed by snake parasites. But sometimes it gets a little boring to see another villain group that looks human. This is a science fiction franchise with aliens. Show me some aliens. That's why I like the Wraith so much. Sure, they're just people in makeup, but it's good makeup and shows that Stargate can do good alien designs. Heck, I'd argue that universe has some of the best. But then the main villains of the show were the Lucian Alliance, a group primarily made up of humans. And yes, I know there were the discount Twi'lek guys, but we didn't see them in universe. They just feel so much more boring compared to the past villains. In fact, let's do a quick comparison with the past villains. We've had snake-like parasites that take over human bodies and portray themselves as gods, self-replicating insectoid-like robots that aid advanced technology, which admittedly got less cool when they started having human bodies, but that's neither here nor there. Space vampires that fed on humans and beat the builders of the Stargates in a war. More self-replicating robots that saw humanity as the favorite child of their creators and were jealous of them. Ascendant beings with a galaxy of loyal followers and space wizards who wanted to conquer the Milky Way and force their beliefs on. And who stands at the end as the last major villain of the Stargate franchise? A couple of gangsters with spaceships.
Woo! Yeah, baby! That's what I've been waiting for. That's what it's all about. Woo!
I get that logically a group like this would rise after the fall of the Gould Empire, but again, its main villains, I just don't think they work. At least not as well as like something, say, the Banished from Halo. And what sucks is that they should have been better. See, there was this little speech that Telford made when he was brainwashed by the Lucians. How Earth may have freed the humans of the Milky Way, but left them with no way to survive on their own. How Earth acts as judge and jury. How it takes whatever it wants. How it only does good for itself and doesn't care how it affects other planets. He says the technology of the Destiny was meant for the betterment of all of humanity, not just Earth. He asks the question,
what makes us so special? I know what makes me special.
I love this. This would have helped save the Lucian Alliance to me as villains, them moving away from being a crime syndicate and trying to portray themselves as a legitimate government, being the Milky Way's version of the coalition of planets. But the leaders are still corrupt and are only out for their own interests. They promote this anti-Earth propaganda to unite people behind them because it is a legit criticism on Earth. They didn't really offer any help to the millions of people after the fall of the Empire. Again, that's really cool and actually ties in with real-world events, as many authoritarian governments will cite the West's past or current sins as some sort of justification for their own crimes. However, the issue is, as far as I can tell, this is all in Telford's head from the brainwashing. No one in the Alliance seems to believe in this idea. They are in it for their own personal gain and act like cartoon villains, if I'm being honest, or have been forced into the Alliance. Really, no one should be loyal to them. After all, you can be what I have to assume is one of the few scientists in the Alliance, since most humans in the Empire were essentially living in a feudal state as slaves, and still be killed because an enemy lied about you being incompetent. And then when that enemy fully admits that he lied, your leader's response after doing it is this.
I shouldn't have to demonstrate how important this is to me. To all of
Listen, Dr. Rush. No more chances.
You're a idiot.
Now, yes, that's an extremely intimidating thing to say and see, but that doesn't change the fact she murdered a highly valuable asset to the Alliance, really for no good reason. This character, Kiva, supposedly cares about her people and wants what's best for them, but what does that mean? Who are her people? What does it mean to be a Lucian or a member of the Lucian Alliance? Because as far as I can tell, again, the only two reasons to join are a desire for power or you're intimidated into it. Neither of which gives the Alliance a lot of long-term stability, and it seems to me they're going to collapse harder than the Gould Empire did. The only reason the Gould Empire collapsed was because of so many threats on the outside pushing down on them along with their bad system. But to me it seems like the Lucians have a bad system that's barely holding on at all. And getting back on track, as far as I can tell, the only time the Lucians tried to do the legit government thing was when they approached the Langarans about using their gate to get to Destiny. But outside of that, they're just gangsters with spaceships. Kind of cartoony ones, to be honest. Again, I think they worked as a semi-minor crime group, but as central antagonists, they have always felt lacking to me. And which sucks is because when we do return to the Stargate universe, we're gonna have to kind of deal with them as the main villains. Unless, of course, we shift our focus to new villains or ones more deserving of the title as the main villains in Stargate. And so, for the rest of this video, I'd like to go over my top 5 best picks for better villains for a new Stargate series. Number 5, the Gould. Now, the reason the Gould are at the bottom of this list is because I can already hear the counter arguments in the comments. The Gould's story has been told. We've seen their empire fall and the last system lord defeated. Bringing them back now would just be a cheap way to bring back old viewers by relying on pre-established ideas from Stargate's past. However, I'd argue the Gould's story isn't over yet. Yes, their empire is gone and odds are their species has been heavily reduced in their population. But we know the Gould survived and found a foothold on Earth in the Trust. And while the death of Baal was a big hit for them, I think it would be safe to assume that Athena took over. Her fate, along with the Trust, was never fully answered. So as far as we know, they're still on Earth, and therefore a way to bring them back into the story. And it's actually not the first time this was attempted. In the video game Stargate Resistance, the System Lord's third battle group attempted to reconquer the galaxy. However, I think they should go in a different direction with the Gould. Have the Gould and the Trust learn a lesson from the fall of their empire. That instead of ruling out in the open, big and loud, have them rule from the shadows, quiet and subtle. Essentially have them adopt an ideology similar to the rule of 2 era Sith from Star Wars. Working behind the scenes to gain power and influence. Have them take over the bodies of key members in government, economic, and even celebrity circles. Heck, we could even have them infiltrate the Lucians and try and pit Earth and them against each other. Meanwhile, as the masses fight against each other, they work to increase their own standing in society. You know, like real-world politicians. Number 4, the Ashen. The Ashen really do feel like a missed opportunity. They were an advanced human group who defeated the Gould in an alternate timeline. They come to less advanced groups to offer technology and aid, but it's all a trap so they can render the population sterile and slowly take control of their world. And before you comment they were destroyed by a black hole, that was never officially shown, and they did attempt to get revenge on Earth during the events of the book Relativity. And for those who say the books aren't canon, they did show up in the new RPG book officially licensed by MGM. Up to their old tricks again, in case you're wondering. I also know based on some comments I get every now and again that many did want to see them return during SG-1 or even become the main villains in later seasons. With the power vacuum left by the Gould and the destruction caused by the Ori, they are in a better position to take control of the galaxy now more than ever. They can offer worlds protection from the Lucian Alliance and technological aid, spreading out the Confederation and getting revenge on Earth at the same time. There's only 2 issues with them as the main villains. First, and I can't remember if I read this in an interview or saw this on a comment, but apparently one of the writers didn't like the Ashen, so that's why their story never continued. So it's not clear if any of the writers would want them to come back, and to be honest, I kind of don't blame them. This leads into issue 2. Remember, the thing about the Ashen is that they expand slowly, with it taking them decades for their full plans to be carried out. That kind of thing is terrifying, but my god, must it be boring to watch in real time.
They don't get excited in General. It's like an entire planet of accountants.
That may be the biggest issue with the Ashen as villains. I don't think we would get the big military action scenes we get in Stargate with them. Yes, they did beat the Gould in a war, but odds are they were just using biological weapons, which isn't as cool to watch as this is. We know the Ashen had warships in the books, so I don't doubt we wouldn't see big space battles, but I doubt we would get the really cool ground battles. Again, as Jack says,
it's like an entire planet of accountants.
It's like the thing that makes the Ashen scary and cool, their slow and cold motives, makes them kind of bad in a military show with lots of battles. It'd be like having the prophets from Halo as frontline soldiers. It's just weird to see and not really what they're used for. That doesn't count! Number 3, the Tacon. Don't click off. Hear me out. For those of you who don't know, the Tacon were the main villains of the non-canon animated Stargate show, Stargate Infinity. Again, Infinity is non-canon, and also non-good.
I'm old, I get achy!
But I think the Tacon could work as the main villains in Stargate. First, timeline-wise, it matches up. Infinity takes place 30 years after the movie, roughly around the year 2024, which at the time I'm making this video will be next year. So if a new show were to start up around this time period, it would be around the same time that Stargate Command first made contact with the Tacon in Infinity. Their tech was clearly influenced by the Goulds, with staff weapons and pyramid ships. I don't think it would be a stretch to say that they were slaves in the Empire, and then when the Empire fell, they took control of their former master's technology. Now, sometime later, they have built up their strength and seek to establish their own dominion across the galaxy. Boom, instant bad guys. And the interesting thing about them is they have qualities beyond their military strength that would make them interesting. They're smart enough to use a race of shapeshifters to infiltrate Stargate Command. They have a clear governmental structure with an interesting clash between the leader and warrior caste. And they have a civilian population. Yeah, when was the last time in Stargate we got to see an enemy faction with a civilian population that was the same race? And there's actually an interesting episode where we follow some of these civilians as they try to flee their oppressive government. Again, there is something that can be done with these guys, and I will die defending this hill. Check out my video on the top 5 good things in Stargate Infinity where I talk about them forming a Covenant-like organization. Man, I am making a lot of Halo references today, aren't I? Number 2, the Hawken. So I don't blame you if you don't know who the Hawken are. I've done a video on them before if you want to check it out, but the long and short of it is they were supposed to be used in the video game Stargate: The Alliance. They were a race who were technologically uplifted by the Ancients, but they corrupted these gifts the Ancients gave them and went on to cause a reign of terror across the galaxy before being sealed away by the Ancients. During the events of the game, they would have been freed by Anubis, who would have formed an alliance against the Tari. Now, sadly, the game was never officially released, but this may be an opportunity to use an old concept for something new. Their backstory may have to be workshopped to work in the current timeline, but that doesn't seem too hard since we don't know much about the Ancients' time in the Milky Way compared to their time in Pegasus. And an advantage the Hawken have is they have a complete understanding of ancient technology, which makes them more than a match for Earth, who, while having access to both Asgard and ancient technology, has only scratched the surface of what can be done with said technology. Really, all the story ideas are already there, they just need to be workshopped, edited, and finalized. Kind of like what 343 did with the Forerunners, and dang it, there's another Halo reference! And number 1, the Wraith. This is, in my opinion, the biggest villain group that if a new Stargate show were to start, needs to deal with, because unlike the Gould replicators in Ori, the Wraith were never defeated. Heavily weakened, yes, but they are not gone. And thanks to the Wraith signal from another universe, it's possible that more Wraith besides the Superhive know about Earth's location. And here's the thing, the Wraith aren't stupid. We've seen them be just as innovative or creative with their technology as much as the Tari are. So it's not crazy to think they could find some way to survive in their galaxy with current conditions, or thrive by finding some way to get to Earth. And yes, I know there are books and comics that have depicted the events of Atlantis after the show ended, but something I've learned in doing these videos is not many Stargate fans know about these or even care. Most don't consider them canon, and I'm inclined to agree with them in this case. I don't mind books and comics telling stories and making them canon in universe, but you shouldn't have one of the main villain factions be dealt with in external media. And that's not to question the quality of these books and comics. I'm sure the people who wrote them are fans of Stargate too and want to give satisfactory endings for the Atlantis show, which at the time seemed like it wasn't coming back. But that doesn't change the fact that unless you're an uber nerd like me, many are not going to even bother looking up this information, let alone actually reading them. And let me ask you something, if you saw a new Stargate show and they brought up the Wraith and it goes something like this?
Oh, you're the Wraith. We don't need to worry about those guests anymore. We have a treaty with them. Now there's a crazy story. Roddy got turned into a Wraith.
Are you busy? I need help with something.
Oh, well, we'll talk to you all later.
How would you react to that? Based on what I've seen in the past with other franchises? Not well. But those are just my thoughts. And to be clear on something, if you like the Lucian Alliance as the main villains in Stargate right now, that's okay. These are all just my opinions and you're not required to agree with me. If you like the Lucians as the main villains, tell me why. Do you like one of my ideas? Or do you have your own pick for the next big bad in Stargate? Leave a comment, like and subscribe, and remember,
Lucian Alliance.
The uniform. Pathetic, isn't it? Pretending to be something we're not.